one entity in which the Venezuelan people face violence, and that is from the colectivas and the armed thugs that Nicolas Maduro has unleashed upon its people, not from any other entity in the hemisphere. There's only one person who causes the suffering of the Venezuelan people. It is not sanctions by the United States or anyone else. It is by the failed policies of Nicolas Maduro, who takes one of the wealthiest countries in the Western Hemisphere and has his people eating out of garbage. It is only one entity that has stolen the national patrimony of Venezuela, and that's Nicolas Maduro. And it is only one set of interventions that has taken place inside of Venezuela. It's taken place by Cuba, that has its security apparatus propping up Maduro. If you go and fly into Caracas, you ultimately get searched by Cuban agents. Cuban agents are in the midst of creating silos among the generals in Venezuela so that they can't talk to each other, because they're fearful that they do, that their head will roll, and therefore can't talk about joining together to maybe support a democratic government. That's intervention. There's only one intervention by another foreign country, that's Russia, as it continues to prop up the Maduro regime in a whole host of ways, not the United States of America. And finally, I really tire somewhat of the suggestion about our sanctions. I've done foreign policy for 27 years between the House and the Senate. I only know of a handful of peaceful diplomacy tools to get countries to move in a certain direction. International criticism, condemnation, and opprobrium may move a democracy, but I haven't seen it move many dictators. I wish that it would, but it hasn't. And so, what are we left with? Unlike Russia, that uses military adventurism to pursue its foreign policy goals, we only have a handful of useful peaceful diplomacy tools. The use of our aid to induce countries to act a certain way, the use of our trade and access to our markets to induce countries to act a certain way, the leverage of our entities like USAID to help countries, and then there's the denial of aid or trade or access to our financial institutions, which we generally call sanctions. Now, I'd be happy to get a lesson about what other phalanx of peaceful diplomacy tools we have. So, unless we are willing to accept a dictatorship that oppresses its people, that does so by force, and that has them eating out of garbage cans and denies them the critical medicines necessary to stay alive, I'm not going to be repentant about our advocacy for sanctions as a peaceful tool to try to move a country in a better direction, and that includes Venezuela. And so I hope we just don't lose our eyes on who is responsible for the suffering of the Venezuelan people. His name is clear, it's etched in stone, it's etched in history, and hopefully he will face the opprobrium of history at the end of the day, and that's Nicolas Maduro. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.